Very good morning, very good afternoon, very good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining our Leadership What Successful Leaders Need to Do to Foster Employee Connection at the workplace. Thank you so much for joining. My name is Mihai Nagy. I'm the head of content partner here at the Agile Congress. I would like to take this opportunity, first of all, to thank to our partner WorkHuman for making this event possible, this series possible. If you've joined previously, we have the employee experience and a culture, now focusing on leadership. And the November session will be on the future of work. Really interesting evolution of how what we've been experiencing. Certainly, we are living unprecedented times. We probably can't even call it a new norm anymore. Rising inflation, we just came out from COVID. The economic crisis or uncertainty we're experiencing, the ongoing war in Ukraine, the great reshuffle, the great resignation. So this is not a new norm. These are times of no norm. The speed is just so unprecedented, just so fast. We are basically have the opportunity to experience the greatest reshuffle in work in the past century. So it certainly puts a major pressure on leaders and major pressure on organization. But particularly when it comes to pressure on leaders, I'd like to mention a bit about managers, because managers somewhat caught in the middle. During the lockdown, during the pandemic, leaders and managers had to adjust to the new work reality, leading teams remotely, managing performance remotely, hiring, onboarding remotely. More and more HR is there to be an architect, helping the leaders to manage performance and deal with their people. But managers and leaders, the one who actually implement the HR practices and engage the individuals in their team and manage team performance all the way. And when it came to COVID, when it came to remote work, it particularly became challenging. How to connect, how to engage, how to appreciate when we actually don't even see each other. In fact, it's a major pressure on culture as well. Many of our new colleagues have not stepped even in a physical building just recently. And even now in forward-thinking organizations manage hybrid work in a very different way. There's no mandate how people come and go to the office. They leave it to the team. They leave it to the team leaders to manage their team when it comes to experimenting with hybrid working. So it's an additional pressure on the top of the normal workload, how to really keep the team engaged, how to drive performance while we, of course, ensuring that work is actually meaningful. And the workplace, and whether workplace at home or in the office, it doesn't really matter. So in the next 90 minutes, we shall be looking at leadership. And some of the questions we shall be asking: how leaders can ensure that employee recognition is fulfilling, authentic, embedded, equitable, and personalized. Certainly not something like this, because recognition has to be meaningful to the person who receives the recognition. We shall be looking at the role of leaders in creating a truly inclusive culture and truly inclusive value-driven teams and value-driven organizations. Certainly not like this. When it comes to inclusion, we don't just need to tolerate the differences. We don't just need to respect the differences. We need to celebrate the differences, what each of us bring to the table. We shall be looking at what leadership lessons we have learned from the COVID-19 and how leadership is redefined in this new no-norm environment when the only thing is constant, is continuous change. Certainly not like this. So I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce our speakers. I'm very grateful and thankful to our speakers who actually spared no effort in preparing and bringing you amazing and insightful content, true value, hopefully helping you to redefine leadership in the next norm. We shall be kicking off the session with Derek Irvine. Derek will become on how leaders can ensure employee recognition, deliver tangible business benefits session. Judith Mingis will be here with us, ladies and gentlemen, to bring a very interesting, insightful case study on the role of leaders in creating an inclusive company culture and values. And after that, we'll jump on a panel discussion, and three amazing ladies will be here with me on a virtual stage when we talk about what leadership lessons has COVID taught us and how leaderships can be redefined in the pandemic. So the former Global Head of Leadership, Liz Ryder, will be here with us from Volvo Cars. From WorkHuman, Donna Louise Fitzpatrick, the Global Talent Development manager, career coach, and Spark coaching lead. And last but certainly not least, from GE Healthcare, Katja Kruglova, Vice President of HR, will be joining me on the panel. And of course, as I mentioned to you, this is the third episode, the third series of our The Future of Work series with WorkHuman. So there's one more coming up in November, The Future Disrupted. If you scan this QR code, it will take you the landing page where you can actually sign up. It's absolutely free of charge to participate. Even if you can't make it on a day, sign up, because we are recording the session, and the recording will be shared with everybody afterwards. And now, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, it's my absolute pleasure to introduce our first keynote speaker. Derek Irvine is here with us, Senior Vice President of Strategy and Consulting at WorkHuman. And we shall be hearing a very interesting, very insightful session on how leaders can ensure employee recognition delivers tangible business benefits. Now, employee recognition, correct me, Derek, if I'm wrong, but employee recognition, it makes, first of all, humane sense. So even if it doesn't bring business benefit, we should be recognizing our people, should be recognizing each other. But of course, when it comes to selling employee recognition internally to the CFOs and main stakeholders, speaking their language of tangible business benefit, it certainly helps.
Yes, no, absolutely. I mean, that's probably the core of what I'm going to present to you all this morning. Good morning, everybody. Is that employee recognition, which is the theme that I'm going to speak about, or the power of thanks, if you like, thanking each other. You know, it's not just a nice to have. It is indeed a very human thing to do, but it is also something that delivers absolutely to the bottom line. And I'm going to show you many client case studies from some of the world's most admired companies that have succeeded in using thanks as a powerful driver of keeping their employees engaged, of driving connection in the workplace. I've got the real results. I will also share with you some very, very new results from a Gallup and WorkHuman cooperation, which surveyed tens of thousands of employees across multiple countries across the world. And it too, as a piece of survey, reflects the importance of feeling recognized at work. It really drives engagement very significantly. So those are two things to watch out for, as I said, real client case studies and employee surveys from Gallup that are fresh off the press. You'll see that I work at a company called WorkHuman. We often say at WorkHuman, you know, that without the human, it's just work. And how boring and you know, drudgerous that would be if it was just work, because it is about the combination of humanity too. And one of the first, you know, lessons I would say to everybody, and we do this very strongly at WorkHuman, is to remember to introduce yourself as a human. You know, a degree of vulnerability is super important in leading a team. So this is me. As I said, I work for WorkHuman. It is an Irish origin company, although our footprint is truly global these days. We offer our service in well over 100 countries across the globe. We're a unicorn, a multi-billion-dollar company today. I'm there since the beginning of the company. And over the years, I've had the privilege of hosting our very own conference, which we call WorkHuman Live, which brings together HR professionals, leaders, business leaders like yourselves, who are interested in making work be more human. That's the goal of our conference, making work be more human. And as you can see over the years, we've had all sorts of impressive figures join us on stage, from Michelle Obama. Over there on the extreme left is Tamara Burke, the original founder of the #MeToo movement. So tackling difficult, real issues that affect all of us as humans. I live in Spain with my camera-shy husband. We have double twins, 2 girls and 2 boys, so that keeps us busy. As you can probably tell from the Irish accent, I did work for many years promoting Jameson around the world, international marketing for Jameson, which was just as much fun as what I do today. And the swimming pool is there because after I check emails early in the morning, I very much like to try to get out to one of the beautiful natural swimming pools that I have close to our house, which you can also see there. We're doing a renovation in our house. So that's me as a human. And let's dig into the topic. Well, I mean, I don't need to tell you this, you know, the multiple challenges that we face today. We've seen many of them now, but some interesting ones on this slide. I mentioned them already. Me Too, Black Lives Matter, you know, diversity and inclusion, a huge topic these days. Also the quiet quitting, the great resignation, new hybrid working, but also addressing things that have been out there for a long time and overdue to be addressed, like the global gender pay gap. I mean, this is a really interesting one down at the bottom right-hand side, that the World Economic Forum estimates on current trends, it will take us 136 years to address the current global gender pay gap. Also, just beside that, 1 in 5 adults will suffer some sort of mental wellness challenge in any given year. So we're there to help as HR professionals. We've got to do better, I would say, on all of these things. And I'm going to share with you some remarkably simple techniques that can strengthen your team, strengthen you as a leader. Because, you know, if you look at this photo, this classic selfie, connected humans are really powerful when they're together. You know, the urge to pick up the phone and I'm going to make a selfie for my kids because I love to show them what I did during the day. I'm going to make a quick selfie. None of you are in the photo, so you don't have to hide your face. But I make a quick selfie. This was Papa at work. You know, what's here is the energy of saying, I want to display our team, and it's a diverse team, and we're happy together. Connected humans are super powerful. So therefore, it's really important that we maintain human connection. They can still be powerful, but as you know, we have some headwinds. Are we still as powerful when we're virtually working together? I would say we're tackling the transactional side extremely well of work. We've proven during COVID, businesses can still survive, but transactionally. And I would question what's happening on the emotional side. Because to succeed as a leader, to succeed as a team, you need both the transactional and you need the emotional side to truly succeed. So what I'm seeing working with clients is I'm seeing that culture is decaying. You know, we went into COVID with a set culture, and that strong culture helped organizations to get through COVID. People stayed strong, people stayed together, they helped each other. But I'm sure many of you are like my own organization, WorkHuman, where almost a half of our staff have joined the company during the pandemic. And they therefore have never experienced, you know, that pre-pandemic culture. So what we are seeing is a genuine decay in culture. And at the heart of that decay is a lack of human connection. Now, I promised earlier, and this is what the report looks like. There will be a QR code later that you can download this report, but a very extensive global, I believe it was 34,000 employees were surveyed, run by Gallup, who've been around forever, as you know, on the employee engagement space. And they look at exactly this topic. How can we boost employee connection and the simple power of saying thanks to do so? So I'll go into that now. Let's have a look at the first big statistic out of that report. You know, that culture decay, it's a real thing. Only 25% of employees feel connected to their culture at this point. That's 75% of people are saying, you know, I just don't feel connected where I work. 25% reporting feeling burnt out often or always. Only 1 in 3 strongly agree with the statement that they belong. Now, belonging is a super important word when it comes to diversity and inclusion, because as we know, diversity is just one thing. It's having a diverse group together, but moving to a sense of belonging is where we all need to get to. So 1 in 3 is a terrible statistic right now. And nearly 40% say that they're planning as a consequence of looking for a new job as a result of that lack of connectedness. So, you know, one of my key messages to you is human connection. And I don't necessarily mean absolutely physical connection, but creating moments that matter for people. Moments where they're going to feel connected to your culture. They're going to feel connected to you as a person. They're going to feel seen as a human. We need to do that way more. This is an example of those of you that have worked in the States or have American colleagues like I do will know a s'mores party, you know, where you roast marshmallows over a fire and you melt chocolate and you put them inside a biscuit. It's a thoroughly delicious event. And maybe somebody is playing a guitar, they're telling stories, you feel the heat of the fire. I mean, this is great human connection. You remember these stories, you remember the humanity, the honesty, the authenticity of the moment. But contrast to that to, what a transactional version of the same event looks like. Transactionally, this ticks the box. It's, tiny campfire s'mores party, but it's delivered virtually. We all received a GIF file, which we open up. We have a fire on our computer screen. We've received a little packet. I mean, it's just not the same, obviously. And that's exactly what I mean by, I think our greatest challenge right now is there's a whole movement that says, look, we survived COVID transactionally, but I question, what are we doing intentionally differently to boost the emotional connection that we have with our teams and helping people to feel stronger? Now, the solution that for sure is not more bureaucracy. You don't need a new project management system. You don't need a new HRIS system to create that connection. I'm going to give you 3 very simple, powerful words that can help create that connection. And they come as a result of working, as I said, with some of the world's most admired companies over 2 decades. And I've co-authored 3 books on this topic. The most recent called Making Work Human. And the book is packed full of case studies, sharing how companies are achieving human connection through utilizing those simple 3 words of thanking each other, talking each other more authentically, and celebrating together. In that Gallup survey, we see that when employees get that sense of human connection, they're way more likely to succeed. When they receive enough recognition and thanks, it boosts their connection. And we can see that works even more so for hybrid or office workers than those that are completely remote. So I want to ask you a quick question. Just pause for a moment and think, how often do you truly connect at that emotional, not transactional side with your colleagues? And unfortunately, in many workplaces, it can only be quarterly for some special event or whatever, but it really ought to be answer C or D. If you answered C or D yourself, you're doing really well. If you answered A or B, you've got some work to do. So let's dig a little bit deeper into that first word, thanking each other, or employee recognition, as we said earlier. A colleague of mine, Dr. Robert Emmons, who's professor of psychology at UC Davis, he talks about gratitude, thanking, being the ultimate performance-enhancing substance. Because when you thank people, it impacts our brain. A hormone actually gets released when I'm being thanked. It's like, hey, Derek, I want to thank you for an amazing thing you did at this meeting. You really showed your skills, your values were shining through, the team appreciated it greatly. It releases dopamine and serotonin in my body. I actually, potentially get goosebumps when I'm receiving that thanks. And as a result, what it also does is it banishes negativity from the brain. It turns out that our brains have a limited capacity for negative and positive thoughts. So if we fill our brains with more positive thoughts, it just makes our brains healthier. As a result, we feel more inclined to reach out. It becomes contagious because we're reaching out to other people. And as a result, it very much builds on itself. And these are some of the benefits of that. A healthier Derek, a thankful Derek, a spark in my step. I'm going to feel emotionally stronger. Believe it or not, I'm going to have lower blood pressure. I'm likely to sleep better. And I'm going to be more connected socially. I'm going to be more generous, more giving, more helpful. Thanking is a wellness strategy. It's a health strategy. People in your organization will feel healthier and weller as a result of being thanked. And of course, it also boosts engagement and reduces the likelihood to leave your organization. I have a very quick video.
The presentation was okay, but the thought you had,
when companies work human, people stay through anything.
the quick thinking saved us. You saw something. It's changed everything. You may think we don't see you, but I'm so glad you were the one in the room with me.
When people are recognized, they feel seen. They feel they belong.
Good job.
Because without the human, it's just work.
So just giving you a small example of what we mean, and you can instantly see the energy in that moment. We understand it. We know as humans how to do this. And I want to thank all of you for showing up today. You are taking a step forward already in your journey of bringing more humanity into the workplace. So bravo to all of you for taking that first step. Another story that I like to tell is one of our very first clients to launch a program called Bravo, and it's an organization, Bay State Health. They're a hospital organization with thousands of employees in the northeast of the United States. And they launched, as I said, an employee thank you program called Bravo. And one of the amazing stories was one of the very first recognitions that went through was from a senior medical, like a chief medical officer, to the gardener. And they were saying, I want to thank you for the incredible gardens that you look after day by day. They are a benchmark for our area, for our hospital. They're so beautiful, so well tended. I can see the care, I can see the passion. And the reason I'm saying this to you is because barely a week goes by and I don't hear a patient say to me that the minute I walk in the door, I know that I'm going to be taken care of well at Bay State Health, because your gardens are so beautiful. I can see instantly the values of this organization on display. And there's the connection. There's the connection between two humans that might otherwise not have had an experience to interact with each other. And there's the values of the organization coming to life in a micro moment. And what we do at WorkHuman is we aim to amplify those micro moments into thousands and thousands of moments so that it creates thousands and thousands of moments of human connection, where thanks is the meaningful enabler of that connection. And that in turn, as you see in a moment, drives engagement and reduces turnover. So let's have a look at some of these statistics. As I said, I promised the Gallup survey would be very insightful. And this is what do receivers of thanks feel? They are 4 times more likely to be happy at work if they're receiving adequate thanks. They're 4 times as likely to agree that their company's leadership is appreciative of the work that they do, and 2 times as likely to be highly engaged. So these are pretty impressive figures, and we'll see some actual client case studies in a moment too. And what's really interesting is that the givers of thanks also receive that benefit as well. It turns out that getting thanks and giving thanks are just as inspirational. Now, there is a copy of this report that you'll be able to download at the end. But I do want you to also think, how often do you like to be thanked for the contributions you make? Just take a moment and say, how often do I like to be thanked? Do you like to be thanked just annually? I doubt it. The right answer for most people is C or D, at least every few weeks or weekly, because, hey, we do good things every few weeks or weekly. So we know that we need to be thanked that often. And unfortunately, most managers think, yeah, I agree with recognition and I'll do it and I'll get to it, but it slips off the to-do list. It's just not done adequately in most organizations. So we asked that question of one of our clients, Cisco. Well, what is the right amount of recognition to be conducting? What is the right amount to be doing? And what we found was that getting up to, you can see in Cisco's case, you could get all the way up to 10 recognition moments in a year, and it was boosting engagement all the time. There was no diminishing returns. So long as there's authenticity behind this, so long as it doesn't become gamified, so long as there's authenticity, you can keep going, it seems, and it will drive employee engagement up to 10 times being recognized within a year at Cisco. And we see these amazing results across the board. We see these results in AstraZeneca, who's also a client, 2 times lower turnover. When employees are receiving about 6 awards during the year, turnover was cut in half. And that's a very significant number indeed, to see turnover come down in half. And it's something that we see across the board, across our client set. And I would say the reason for that is, you think about the kids that I have. If I was saving up for my kids to have an annual thank you moment, just in January, I'm going to say thank you, or I'm going to say I love you. I mean, my kids would be off the rails. So you know that you constantly reinforce with your kids. And I would say that I love you of families. And how often do we say that is like, thank you in the workplace. We've got to do it often to be encouraging people on the journey and bringing them along. And we see amazing insights at Merck Pharmaceutical. They insist on giving recognition to new hirers early on. So new hirers, you'll see the green line is new hirers that have been recognized early on versus those that have not been recognized as the gray line. And you see their probability of leaving the organization. I mean, the two are poles apart If you recognize those new joiners, they're 5 times less likely to leave. Why? Because they instantly feel a connection with the organization much earlier on. We also see this happening in diversity and inclusion, a sense of inclusion being boosted. That 7 or 8 recognition moments throughout the year on the bottom of that chart is boosting people's sense of inclusion and belonging in the organization very significantly indeed. So that takes me to an insight on diversity and inclusion. After 1 year of a recognition program, Hispanic employee turnover dropped by 20% at one of our clients, and female turnover dropped by 17%. That's because thanking people, quite simply the message for you today, is it creates human moments of connection that are meaningful for the people that are receiving them. Another really interesting insight we have from the data is that women, it turns out, are much better at this than men. Now, might not be a surprise to the women on the call, but it was a big surprise to me. It turns out women are better at creating these connection moments by giving and indeed receiving recognition. Now, that comes down to the bottom line. If you see for the average 10,000 person employee company, if you can reduce turnover by the amounts that we're talking about, it's a direct bottom line benefit, depending on the cost of turnover for you, of anywhere from 4 million euro to 16 million euros. This matters, as we were said at the beginning, to CFOs on the bottom line. Thanking is not just a nice to have, it is direct financial benefits. So that's thanking. I really encourage, big message for today, think about human connection and using thanks to do that. Now, 2 very final words, and these are much quicker than the thanking section. I said we'd also talk about talking. So talking is about talking to each other authentically, really throwing out the annual performance review that everybody seems to hate, holding all that love and feedback for just one moment in the year. Instead, doing so continuously throughout the year. How difficult is that? To have regular check-ins, regular feedback, making sure we're on the same page in terms of priorities. It has a huge impact, and we saw this too in the Gallup report and also in our client case studies. It's 2 times more likely to feel a sense of meaning, to trust their manager, simply if they're having that weekly check-in between humans, creating a moment of connection. And my final word is that we need to celebrate things together. I mean, of course, we should be celebrating, years of service in the company. I'm here 5 years, I'm here 2 years, I'm here 10 years. But life happens around us as a team, as humans. So when I get a new dog, I buy a new house, maybe it's my birthday, life is happening. I graduate from college. We should be utilizing these human moments to create connection. And as you see from this statistic, we're not using them. We're not celebrating the humanity that's just happening in our day-to-day lives around us, even in the most obvious one of a work anniversary. So this is also what WorkHuman does. We facilitate not only the thanking, not only the continuous performance development, but also celebrations of community events, special days, charity things that we do together. The birth of new babies, we had a host of these during COVID, and even more new pets, it seems. And we were celebrating them. Colleagues were given an opportunity to come in and say, hey, so you got a new house, congratulations, looking forward to the housewarming. And when you do these things, again, it comes through to the bottom line, because organizations that celebrate at least just one human event, employees in that circumstance are 3 times more likely to agree that they feel connected, because you've got a human moment of connection between the employees as a result on so many different levels. So I'm going to leave it at that, and I'm going to encourage you to think in your day, what can you do to create more human connection moments? Because when you create human connection moments, it drives likelihood to stay, it drives engagement, it drives a sense of belonging, it drives so many different things. And 3 really powerful words to think about. How can I thank people more often? How can I talk authentically more often and celebrate things together? Thank you for listening.
That was absolutely wonderful, Derek. Thank you so much for this amazing and enlightening presentation. I really, really enjoyed all the content, all the pace. And of course, ladies and gentlemen, the slides are available in the handout. So if you'd like to download a copy for yourself together with some research appreciating your participation, please do proceed to the handout session so you can get all these materials. Derek, I thank you so much for this amazing
Thank you for the invite. Thank you.
And of
Look
course,
forward
if
to
people
doing the
would like
rest.
to be in touch with you, you are on LinkedIn. So we do encourage everybody to look you up on LinkedIn and get in touch and continue the conversation, because obviously it's just a very small, very short presentation about a very, very important and a massive topic.
Indeed. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Derek. Moving on, ladies and gentlemen, the next session will be a case presentation, and I'm very fortunate to have Judith Ming here with us. Judith is a Group HR Director at BDR Thermo Group, and she will bring a story about the role of leaders in creating inclusive company culture and values, which probably will be a lot of the ideas we heard from Derek will be put in practice here during Judith's session. So Judy, thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you so much. Wonderful to be joining here. And I think actually listening to Derek was quite good. So I'll do a short introduction of myself as well. In the background, you actually see my living room. I'm in my house. And whilst Derek said, how do we stay connected? I think just showing a little bit of where you are creates some sort of connectedness. At least I felt connected. So thank you for that, Derek. I live here on my own, but I have two beautiful big children who come to visit me quite often because we still have the space in the house, which is quite wonderful. And I also live here with my cat, and she was registered on my contract when I bought the house as a purchaser of the house as well. Just a nice anecdote, something personal. It put a smile to my face because it was the notary office who thought it was a nice joke. So that's how you get to know people, I hope. But I'm here today to share with you some thoughts on leadership, culture, values. I'll be introducing to you two frameworks, which I consider very important, but let me set the scene first. At the BDR Thermo Group, we decided to work on the culture work stream because we had to grow quite rapidly. And what do? We're a company that, of course, is part of the energy transition, and we create smart thermal heating and cooling solutions. So we're very much in the space of how you heat your houses and your offices, and we're into the heat pumps, we're into the CO2 reduction. It's a very challenging environment, both logistically, but also from a people perspective, of course, because it is a very technical company. So how do you attract people? Before I continue to say what we did with the culture program that we did during COVID, actually, the lockdown, I just want to say one thing that we all know, and I'm a big believer in these simple statements. And the statement that I want to share is that culture eats strategy for breakfast. So I thought about it long and hard when I was asked to set out on the journey of let's create our culture and values, because we need to grow the company and we need to come together. And we're present in 104 countries, and we have 22 manufacturing sites in different countries, from the US to Asia to Europe. And the US actually, we had to say goodbye at some stage during that COVID period as well, for lots of reasons. So lots of stuff happening. And I thought about it long and hard. What does it actually mean? But what it means actually is that you can adjust your strategy all the time, but you shouldn't really be adjusting your culture all the time, because people like to connect with culture, and culture is there to stay. So if culture is there to stay, why would we run a culture program and develop a culture and find values? Probably, I thought, the culture is there. It's probably very healthy because we're doing really well as a company, even during COVID, struggling with the crisis management. We are still able to continue as a company and be a healthy company. So maybe what we should do is do it differently and start searching for what is there and see how can we extrapolate that. For that, for that thought, I started thinking with my team, because you never do it on your own, and lots of gratitude goes to, and thank you goes to my HR team, the consultants, the leaders. It was a big thing. I decided to introduce the change framework. So maybe we can hit the next slide and have a look at that change framework, because that really led the entire space of what we did. My slide's not changing, so I hope the slide is changing for the others. Yeah, great. The change framework, it's a very simple framework, and it's one that is very helpful. So instead of projectizing the culture program, thinking about all the things we should do, I started working with my team on, we're going to do something that's going to change things for people, but it's not necessarily changing maybe what we've got as a culture. It's maybe finding the culture and then allowing it to tell us what it is that we've got. So what we need to do is we need to have a change framework that does a lot of seeing and understanding first. Let's go out and look and see what we've got. Let's all try to understand it, to move on to framing and choosing. Once you've got all your qualitative data, and maybe hopefully some quantitative data as well, you need to sort of start putting it into boxes, creating a mutual understanding, and then make some choices. And that's where leaders come in. They need to help make those choices, because we were talking about leadership here as well, of course. And then once we've got that sorted, we just need to get going, and we need to move, and we need to do stuff, and we need to internalize it, and we need to put it into practice. We need to keep it up, and we need to continuously learn and improve. And that's the circle that we go through. So we use this framework of always seeing and understanding, framing, choosing, get going and moving. Yeah, and we're still on this slide for a little bit, because one of the things that I usually say to people is, we have this tendency to go to get going and moving. Let's find the stuff, let's sort it. Mine is a company, we're not a consultancy. And in companies, we move towards delivery, we move towards results. So one of the most challenging things is to keep all your managers, your leaders, and your people in the seeing and understanding. So how did we do that? Let's hit the next slide. So what we see here is, hold on, my slide's a bit covered here. So what we see here is actually the steps in how we went about it. Very interesting, we said, in the seeing and understanding, we're going to try and touch all our people. We're going to listen to everybody, show respect and talk to them. And I think our previous presenter also spoke about talking. Well, here we go. We said, we're not just going to assume that we know at the top what will be necessary. We're going to ask the people to talk to us. So we set out a survey called the Barrett Values Survey. And I'll talk a little bit about that model a little bit later. That was a lot of seeing. And then we said, when we got all the results, which was about three questions only. The first question being, what are your personal values? What are the current values in the company? And the third question was, what should the desired values be in our company to determine our culture? Once we got all the results back, we said, so what do we do? Because we have a lot of insights now. So we brought together virtually, like today, all our managers and leaders who have people reporting into them, and we created virtual lunch and learn workshops to make sense of the pile of qualitative data and to involve all the people. By that time, we already created a movement and a buzz, even virtually. And of course, it's nice if you can come together, but remember, it was COVID, we were growing, and we did need to really revamp our culture and our company values to understand what we've had all this time and what are the good parts and what are the parts that maybe aren't so clear. So we tried to bring all these people together and they made sense of it together. The framing and choosing started. We prioritized and we went all the way around in the circle to finally get going and moving. And that is very interesting because it says trust there as well. And with the get going and moving part, we also said, it's very important that there is only one set of company values internally and externally. So when we go outside to our clients, we shouldn't really have a different set of values. They should be the same. We should trust our values. We should trust each other. We should trust the client that we all understand what we are about and that we all understand these values. So again, there was a very important role for all the leaders to support this, because very often the marketeers say, well, I want to tweak it a little bit. And then the people who are more on the process or in the function say, well, I need it to be a little bit different. So the circle of bringing everybody along and allowing those voices was quite important. One of the things that I'm going to zoom in on in a later slide is the movement where we bring in leaders and how we bring in the leaders. By the time we got there, though, imagine there's about 7,000 people in the company globally. We had touched the people in the manufacturing sites, we had touched the people in every country, and we had touched the people in every function. And there was a buzz, a virtual buzz, and we needed to communicate. So the other key thing here that was very important in this project, but not on this slide, because I didn't want to do death by slides, I'd like you to put some questions out there now, or maybe some observations in the chat that I can react to, because I'm sure it's triggering thoughts in your minds, because you're all professionals listening in. So all of this required really great communication skills. And we were very fortunate that we had just revamped our intranet. So we started using all the results, the intranet, the lunch and learn sessions, anything that we could think of to engage with people. And we asked our people to reach out to us and to participate in workshops. So the other thing that's here, and that should be here, and it's not on the slide because, again, I didn't want to create too many slides, is the underlying need of great communication skills. Nobody's a mind reader, and especially not in a period of time where we were in lockdown and you were sitting in the house and you didn't have the coffee room chats or the quick, walks during lunchtime chats. So it was really important for us to involve all the people through great communication. So let's move to the next slide. And this is the Barrett values model. So there were two things that were driving the idea behind how to tackle this. It was the change model and the Barrett. We chose to work with Barrett because it was simple and it was easy. And let me share what I consider simple and easy. I'm not sure about any of you, but if I would ask you the question today, can you name me all the values that you've got in your company? Most people will start mentioning 1, 2, maybe 3 values, and then sometimes they go like, I think we have a 4th or a 5th, or maybe there's another one, or we used to have. So simple means actually that you don't create too many values, because that's quite confusing. And when you ask your colleague, very often they don't really remember all of them, or they don't really know what the meaning is. So Barrett was very specific in saying, you should basically not create too many values. You should create the values that are there and that are necessary for your company to deliver the growth that you are looking for today, for tomorrow, and into the future. That should be sustainable because we're an energy transition company. So this is the reverse of, or this is the Maslow theory behind it. The Barrett Values Center says the first value should represent the foundation in a company. The second one should be around evolution, and the third one should be around impact. So foundation is about all the benefits are in place financially, you know what's happening. You've got reasonably good relationships with your colleagues. You know what you need to deliver. The basics are in good shape, and that value should represent that the foundation is clear to everybody what it is. The next one should go up one level, and it's about evolution. It's where you start to learn together, where you transform, where you reach out to each other. And then at the third level, the impact level, we should really reflect a little bit, because what it says there is, first, at that level, we should come together and we should share our vision. We should collaborate across functions, across boundaries. Diversity, inclusion becomes hugely important. We should respect, unite, recognize, thank people, and then we will be able to contribute to the outside world, and we will be really impactful for our customers. So we set out to do that with the Barrett values model, and we spent quite some time explaining that to the managers and asking managers, do you agree? So we started looking for commitment. We started looking for commitment also with the management board, our ExCom, to ensure that this would not derail halfway through and we would end up with 4, 5, or 6 values, which are so difficult to remember. So let's hit the next slide. So what was, I think, quite special is that we didn't start at the top as a result of the change model, seeing, understanding, touching all the people, emerge and change, the Barrett values, let's look at what's there, but also see if we can find things at the 3 levels of the Barrett values model. And so what we said is, dear management board, executive committee, can you let us do the work and engage with our entire workforce and show them respect, because some of them have been with the company for a long time, some people are newer, etc., etc. So we ran the survey with their support. We did the people managers workshops virtually. We held, GLT is the global leadership team, which is the executive extended team. We did a workshop with them on the results, start engaging. They had discussions and dialogues with the people in their countries, in their functions. They started showing up as leaders. And they started showing up, not only did they start showing up as leaders with personal stories around what they'd seen, what they'd experienced, engaging with people, they started communicating also about what they wanted for the company and how they wanted to achieve it. So it actually created a huge positive leadership buzz, which wasn't at all like a leadership training. It was really appealing to them as human beings and saying, how would you show up? And that's where they started understanding there's so much already in the company. There are so many answers already with our people, because look at all this material. And all we need to do is engage on that material and see how we can internalize it jointly. So then we brought all that stuff to the management board, the executive board, and we asked them, can you lean back? And can you absorb what your company already is doing? Can you absorb the richness of the feedback? And can you see the engagement of all your people? And can you see what the buzz is doing? And I think the executive committee had to think about it a little bit, because they're quite surprised. We, by that time, had nice cartoon movies. We had all kinds of materials already. And they were like, but what is the outcome? What is the outcome? What are the values? Aren't the values the most important? And then we said, well, the values you can tweak, but the fact that you are listening to all the feedback and all the feed forward and all the thoughts of everybody in the company is actually more important. And so we arrived at the 3 values with the help of the executive committee, everybody listening to each other. Now, this is not a fairy tale story. So by the time we end today, I'm quite happy to share with you the learnings and the things that went wrong as well. But I'm talking about the 2 models and the ideas about around emergent change and engagement and showing respect to your entire workforce, because nobody gets up in the morning to do the wrong thing. Everybody gets up in the morning to do the right thing. So this whole culture thing virtually was about, let us use that simple thought. We're all trying to do our best. And then we went top down again. So what you see basically is bottom up and top down, and the circle goes round and round. And what we saw happening after this process, which took about a year, is that it's going through different cycles now, and everybody has been engaging with it and feels they participate. So there are now values awards, which we didn't launch as HR necessarily, because the people wanted those things to be launched. We saw young women standing up and saying, we'd like to have mentoring groups because the values are so appealing, but I'm also struggling as a female person in this company because it's so technical. What can we do? So what it ignited was a lot of initiatives, even in a virtual environment where we didn't go to the office all the time. And I think it went further than we potentially even anticipated. And it brought a lot of energy also to the younger people in the company, which is the future of the company. So it had some really great side effects. And you see some numbers here that we were able to do 48 workshops by July. The program had started in February. By July that year, we did 48 workshops with 3 HR people. 3 HR people. That's huge. That's really a lot of recognition went to these people and how they organized it. And then we had 300 participants at that time, and that spread because 300 people touch twice the number of that people, touch twice the number of that number of people. So that's how we did it. And there were all kinds of learnings. And because of the change model, remember, going through seeing, understanding, framing, choosing, get going, moving, learning, and then implementing your learnings in the next cycle. Because we went all the way up and all the way down, every workshop that was held passed on the learnings to the next workshop as well. And the leaders were forced in a way to sit back and learn to listen, which is a great leadership skill, of course. How do you absorb what's going on versus how do you tell people what your message is? And how do you bring what you hear into your message so you connect with people in a respectful way on what is important to them as much as it is important to you and the company? What's in it for me? What's in it for them? Okay, let's hit the next slide. Internal, external, I mentioned it already, the same set of values. Let me reveal the values then. There we go. Next slide. On the left, 14 topics from the Barrett Values Center were selected as crucially important. These were the results of the survey. They were the results of the management workshops, the GLT workshops, and finally, it came to the board. And this is what the board saw with all the stories and the anecdotes and the cartoons and a little bit of the movies. And we said, this is what people think. And very interesting, you see 13 employee recognition and 14 employee engagement. Fascinating, isn't it? It's also because that's where the company's at. It is a company that came into existence because there were so many different family-owned companies at the origin and the birth of the BDR Thermea Group that you actually see that coming together meant adaptability was required. So that was a very important value at that moment in time when we took the survey. Balance, because we were in the COVID period. Collaboration, because we needed to grow and people were struggling to get work done because there were supply chain issues. We needed to improve our products because we needed to invent the hydrogen boiler. Customer satisfaction, because we're the third largest boiler producer in the world. So how are we going to chase the others? All that type of stuff. So you could actually see a strong focus on business from our own people. But at the end, what really was very fascinating also was the teamwork, employee recognition, and employee engagement, making it into that list of 14. And then we cooked it up and it came out as customer focus, one team, and a sustainable future. And that's where the journey starts, the journey of storytelling, the journey of being authentic, and the journey of sharing what does it mean in the BDR Thermea world to have customer focus. Because we all have customer focus, we understand that. So it's not about the value being customer focus and it explains itself. It's about the journey we go on of seeing and understanding what customer focus means, framing and choosing in customer focus what are the things that we need to do at what stage of our strategy, and then get going and moving. So in the strategy, our customer focus may change, but the value of customer focus will not change. One team, at certain moments in time, one team may mean something else than it means today. Today it meant, let's all work together as countries, because we're still very separate. We have big brands in France, Baxi, we have brands in Germany, we have brands in the Netherlands, Romania. How do we become this one team? How do we benefit from this being this corporate, but not having one brand like our competitors, Vaillant? So what does one team mean? So loading that picture of one team and trying to ensure that the company was growing was very important. And then last but not least, this is of course at the heart of everything we do, a sustainable future for you as an individual. How do we allow our people to learn? It's internally focused and it's externally focused. Sustainable future, how do we contribute to the energy transition? And the energy transition is big because many people don't know, but 30% of CO2 reduction could be coming from our type of company. Heating and cooling in houses and buildings, there's lots more CO2 challenges than there is in the automotive industry, for example. So these were big, and what you see is that's what we were working on. So what did it look like when we celebrated? Next slide. Celebration, very important, recognition. Finally, when everybody got together, we were able to have the people in the room in different countries. We celebrated a values day for the first time in the history of the company, which was dispersed, you know, many companies coming together. And we celebrated it, and people started telling stories about what it was that they saw others do and what they do themselves. Today, it's an integral part of the business strategy. I don't claim it as HR. I think it's completely and entirely business owned. The management board is driving it. It's part of every slide they produce. It's there all the time. So that's the success part of the story. And I'm going to stop here because hopefully we have some questions, because it wasn't all easy, of course. And I'm sorry, this is home working. My doorbell is ringing. So I'm just going to answer that for a second. And maybe there's a question or a comment.
Indeed, ladies and gentlemen, so please put your questions to the comment box or either the chat box or Q&A box.
Okay. Okay. Are there any questions or slides? And whilst you're thinking about it, maybe one of the things that I like to share is learnings, because you could see the sustaining change and the learning. One of the learnings was it's really important to virtually keep communicating. I mentioned it up front, and what we'd done, we thought about it carefully. We created a sounding board, so we didn't use the regular way of running a project where you'd have KPIs and you'd present to a steering committee. Instead, we asked people to join us in a sounding board, and we made sure that people joined us from all layers of the company, but also all different countries. And the sounding board helped us look at all the materials step by step all the time. And that was hugely successful. But one thing we underestimated, because we did go to the executive committee and ask them to support us in running the project this way, we didn't have somebody from the executive committee in the sounding board. And retrospectively, that was a bit of a hiccup, because when all the information came to the executive committee, it was an overwhelming amount of information. And of course, we'd kept them up to date. And I'd spoken to my CEO all the time, and we'd had all these informal chats by video conference, etc. Retrospectively, I would say the most inclusive way to do it is actually also to bring in one of the executive team members, because inclusion is everybody. And the reason why we didn't, though, was because we thought, wouldn't it be wonderful if all the extended executive team would feel so empowered to do stuff that they empower their managers who empower their people. And that was sort of trying to break an old traditional style company into being more modern and engaging and more open and transparent and trusting. And so it delivered an effect, but there was a counter effect where I think we had to do some repairs around the final steps of this program. And I see here, how much of the data have you shown to the management when you took your collection to the leaders, in what form? Well, you try and make it digestible. So what we did, of course, we created an executive summary. And in the executive summary, we said what we find is that people's personal values are very much aligned with the 10 values that they have chosen for the desired company value. But what we see in the middle is that the values that they feel we currently have, because one of the values actually was that we were a cost-driven company, which is not a value. That's a concern. That's a big issue. And we brought those types of conclusions to them. Those conclusions are quite harsh. So what that also created was a desire for the executive board to dig into some of the detail of the data, which we allowed them to do, and we did give them access to the full set of data. And this is why there was a learning where I said I think we should have taken them along a little bit more on the content earlier on. But we made an executive summary with some of the key big findings, trying to make sure also that we got to something that would help us drive the company internally, but also help us really become a winning company on the outside, or remain a winning company on the outside. Are values purely aspirational, or are they values that people get fired for violating? Interesting. Is it a stick or is it a carrot? Is it a stick or is it a carrot? Well, let's put it this way. I think the values, they should be part of everyday conversation. I don't think they should be something where you create the 2 moments in time when you do your performance management discussion, where you should create, sort of a stick-like approach where you say, well, you didn't live up to. So it should be something that should be called out all the time. Are you collaborating with me, or are you pushing back? And if you're pushing back, are you pushing back for a reason? Those types of questions are really important in daily conversations. And that's how I feel the group values should be used. They should really give you a sense of how do I make decisions? Is this going to benefit a sustainable future, or is it going to slow us down? Am I really delivering value to my team member or my customer? Or am I doing this because of another reason? So I don't believe that it should be something that when you violate, it should get you fired. You should be there before you get to that stage. That said, I do think it is a celebration of a company's culture. And if done properly, and if managers are authentic in how they demonstrate these behaviors, you should, of course, be able to call out behavior that isn't really in line and have a great conversation, and ideally not during the 1 or 2 performance discussions you have, but on a daily basis even, I would say. Have you described a behavioral framework sitting behind your values to support conversations, appraisal, etc.? No, we have not, because that's a lot of admin, and I hate admin. But what we have done, we've created a nice open space personal development plan sheet that says what's going well, what can go better, what would you like to do? And then we've given a little bit of a view on how we as HR think the ideal personal development plan should look like, because we are a technical company and people do like examples. So there were some examples that were created so that people could get an idea. And in those examples, of course, we didn't just talk about delivery on target of goals that are really measurable, but we also spoke about the behaviors of customer focus, one team, and a sustainable future, and how that should appear. And then the journey starts of continuous feed forward and really making sure that the company and all the people in it get the time to get acclimatized to this is how we do things around here.
So much, Judith. That was absolutely fantastic. And certainly it resonated really well with the audience, because questions are boring and I hate to do this, to jump in and cut it short. But unfortunately, we need to move on with the program. Having said that, you are on LinkedIn, so if people would like to get further insight, they can reach out to you and probably learn from you, obviously, because that was just so much can be covered in such a complex undertaking, such a complex project. Absolutely fascinating story. I have taken many notes and I wanted to ask questions, but unfortunately time is up. But I will try to reach out to you after that. Thank you so much for joining us today. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we are moving on to the panel discussion. I'd like to invite our panelists, Katja Kruglova, Vice President of HR at GE Healthcare, to join here, Liz Ryder, former Global VP of Leadership at Volvo Cars, and Donna Louise Fitzpatrick, Global Talent Development Manager at WorkHuman. Before we jump on the panel, and the panel will be about what leadership lessons we have learned from the pandemic and how leadership is redefined in a new norm or no norm, when there is an only norm is a constant change. But before we start that, I'd like to take the opportunity and learning from Derek. It was really nice to learn about him as a human being, of course, because without human, work is just work. Would you please let me just open this question for all panelists? Can you just share 1 or 2 interesting facts about you that make or show your human side, if I may put it this way? Let me ask Katja if you were to...
Let me start. Yes, hello everyone. Great to be on this panel. Continuing with the gratitude, I think, Mihaly, thank you for inviting us, and thank you for all of the audience for your active participation. Well, interesting fact, I've lived in 3 countries. I have only 1 daughter. And during COVID, we actually started to have a dog, a pet. We never had dogs, so I think that's the most spoiled dog in the world now, right? So, that's the impact of COVID on my personal life.
Thank you, Katja.
Yeah, and I can follow on from that on the dog side of things. I had a pre-COVID dog, so he's now nearly 7. I'm actually living in Sweden, and we have a moose around the house at the moment. So if suddenly the dog goes crazy, you know the moose is in the garden. And the moose have this habit of eating the apples at this time of year off the trees and getting drunk. And I haven't seen one, but I've seen pictures of them. It's quite good.
You're gonna take a video of that if there's an opportunity.
If it happens, maybe I'll just set the camera over and we can all look at that rather than focus on leadership.
Drunken moose.
Maybe.
Thank you for sharing that, Liz. Donna.
Now, I just got disconnected there, Mihaly. So if you could share the question, please.
Yeah, so basically I was sort of following Derek's example, and I said work without human is just work. So I wanted to just get a glimpse of your personal sort of life. What can we learn about Donna in a couple of words as a human being, as a person?
Okay, well, I mean, first off, I'm super passionate about people. I guess, but if I wasn't, where I'm working now, I am also very passionate about paleontology. So that's something that a lot of people, well, a lot of my colleagues possibly know through our Ignite conferences and so on. But yes, so just as much as I'm passionate about people, I love paleontology, I love history, and it just enriches my soul.
Then in this case, I can guess your favorite character from Friends quite easily.
Ross. You know.
Indeed. I'm not saying about anything about myself. So besides, of course, I also love what I'm doing. I enjoy connecting people and organizing virtual and, of course, physical conferences as well. But besides, what I picked up during the pandemic is sourdough baking. So I'm a passionate home sourdough baker. I attended a few professional courses, actually in the UK, learning from Wayne Caddy directly. So it's one of the passions what I really enjoy, because that's what sourdough baking taught me is about connecting people, right? So never bake one loaf. And that's probably also fits very nicely to the notion of this event and also leadership. It's about thanking, it's about generosity, it's about sharing. I never bake one loaf. I always give it away to friends, neighbors, relatives, whoever comes by. And that helped me to build connections so meaningfully that I never experienced it before. So that's my little story, my personal insights. But let's just move on to the topic of the panel discussion, what we've learned from the COVID pandemic and what we are taking towards. And the question I'd like to turn to Katja about, when you think about the pandemic impacted your own workplace, what was your key learning point for you as a leader?
Yeah, no, great question, and just a bit of a context of the company. So GE Healthcare is a global producer of medical devices, diagnostic solutions, etc. So we're having around 50,000 employees, more than 100 countries. As you can imagine, right? So the pandemic was quite a special time for us, not just because of what we all experienced, but being a producer of medical devices, we actually had to ensure that our customers, hospitals, medical professionals would actually continue serving the patients, right? Because the patients were obviously at the forefront of what we were doing and what we are doing, right? So we had three main priorities, like our mantra going through COVID: protecting our employees, especially frontline field service engineers who had to continue going to the hospitals during COVID to be able to install the equipment, repair the equipment, etc. Our manufacturing colleagues who had to produce the equipment that was much needed, right? If you think about ventilators, anesthesia machine. The second was continue servicing the customers because they are serving the patients, and then protecting the business financially, because obviously if the business would not be financially stable, it would have much more significant impact both on the customers and on our employees. So just having this framework in mind. So a couple of my personal lessons learned as a leader. So first, empowerment started to have a very different meaning. And empowerment is not a new word. We have been using and overusing this in the last sort of decade, right? Sort of trying to make sure that there is empowerment to local teams, et cetera, right? But at the very start of pandemic, right? So beginning of 2020, right? So we really realized, and I'm as an HR leader realized that local teams were really best positioned to judge very fast moving situation on the ground and to act accordingly, meaning that they had to make decisions that in the past, before COVID, would be sort of done at the HQ level, right? We had to provide more like clarity of purpose, really having a very clear framework of short-term priorities. I've just shared them with you, and then really allowing the teams on the ground to be fully empowered to make the right decisions. That also meant like a sort of a change to the how you would do the HR, how would you run the HR practices, right? So moving from global one size fits all sort of strictly managed policies, it was more about very quickly adopted, locally meaningful HR practices, and really giving the freedom to the local HR teams and business leadership to change them as often as the evolving pandemic context was required. So just one very simple, maybe naive example, in China, that was the first country going through pandemic, the local teams decided that it's actually very important for the field service engineers coming back to their home city to actually allow them the opportunity to stay in the hospitals, in the hotels, so that they don't have the even worry that they would bring the COVID to their families. Because again, don't forget, it was like nobody would know this. In the past, it would take us probably a couple of months just to sort of agree why an employee should use sort of company expense at the hotel in the sort of business as usual side. But it was very quickly decided locally, we endorsed them. So lesson learned, different meaning of empowerment, ensure that the teams feel that you have their back, they have full support, encouragement, and just remove the barriers that might be there. And that helps to build the trust. And I think trust was the second big learning, right? So I think the leaders were really pushed to build a very different level of trust between their teams, even if they didn't realize this initially, or even actually it was not the intention, because obviously going through the pandemic, being in a virtual environment and having to balance both teams on the ground, teams in the manufacturing plants, and sort of home-based office colleagues, the leaders just had to break these silos between personal and work, like Mihaly, like you did at the beginning of this call, like sort of four strangers talking about their personal life. So, and sort of that was really showing the commitment on a personal level, and that's the biggest lesson learned, right? Sort of taking care of the employees differently, continue to have this personal connection, because in unprecedented environment, when you actually don't know what you don't know, you know only one thing. You can rely on your team to manage through this unknown, but it only can happen if you take care of them. So that's the two most significant lessons learned.
Brilliant. And particularly personal connection, I think, is critical when we work in remote and hybrid work. And that brings me to the next question. I'd like to turn to Liz about hiring and onboarding new employees. We heard from Derek in the opening that at work, 50% of people were hired during the pandemic. You also, Liz, I know that at Volvocast you went through a massive experience in terms of hiring and onboarding people remotely. So the question to you is that how would you suggest, what was the best way to onboard employees when they're not even stepping a footstep in an organization? How do you bring them into the culture? What advice, could you give here?
Mm-hmm. Well, I'd say that we learned a lot during that period. Certainly, personally, I had 2 new team members coming in. And we kind of like learned as we went along. I remember one of the big challenges that they had was the networking piece, because of course they're not in the restaurant or in the cafe meeting people. So how could we create that opportunity of the casual connection? So we actually built, we had a buddy scheme anyway. So the buddy would then connect to various people, whether it was in China or the US, so that they'd have Teams meetings with people all around the globe. So it was kind of like a forced connection, if you like. One of the things you probably know about Sweden is we have a lot of fika, and that's where you have a cup of coffee and some cake and a chat. And of course, we just turned that into a virtual fika. So we had these very regular fika sessions for new employees, so that they could meet other people in the organization and rotate. So it wasn't just meeting people that they'd already met. It was very much going out into team chat rooms and being able to meet one-on-one. And that worked, I think, really, really well for people to be able to do that. And to make sure, I mean, one of the things that happened in our teams, we'd have a team meeting on a Monday morning, and then everybody would go off and sort of do their work. But, you know, if you're new in the team, you're kind of like, okay, now I'm on my own. What do I do? So another idea that we had was to just have the teams meeting open all day. So that then, you know, you could be doing some individual work, but you could say, hey, you know, just wanted to chat. Can we just have a coffee? You know, can I just brainstorm something? So we had that ongoing connection throughout the day, because as we've already learned this morning, that is super important.
But now, as of course, we are in a sort of a hybrid world of work. Did you find that people actually were waiting for the personal connection after sort of trying to make a virtual connection through various virtual activities? Did you find that making that personal connection made a difference, or what was your view on that?
People wanted to connect physically. Absolutely. We saw that. And when people came back into the office and connected physically, they said, now we want to get back home again so we can get some work done. So it's so interesting. We always want what we haven't got, don't we? And I think it's super interesting that the hybrid remote debate, I mean, we're not going to talk about that so much now. But when you hear Microsoft saying that 87% of employees believe that they're productive, and then you've got whatever equal amounts of managers go, no, they're not. Really, really interesting. I mean, and from a Volvo perspective, we had our best year ever, the most profitable year in history during the pandemic.
Wow. And just make sure that whatever you took away from leadership perspective, probably it's a lesson for organization. Let's not fall back to the known and comfortable way of working.
Exactly. And of course, it was all down to leadership, because that was my area. So that's clearly what it was all about.
Let's move to Donna. Of course, work human, as we learned from Derek, is all about recognition. It's all about thanking to each other. It's all about virtually and physically appreciating one another. How did you, how did you put what you preach in practice, and how did you ensure that your team felt supported, felt listened, felt appreciated when they were physically distant? And what did you bring from the remote working from a COVID area that you can apply or still apply today in this hybrid world of work?
Well, I think this is such an important question, Mihaly, and thanks for spotlighting it. And absolutely not intending to, beat the drum of the benefits of an employee recognition platform, but it really, really works. And, don't even take my word for it. The power of recognition, is science-backed, as we heard from Derek earlier. And Work Human, of course, can speak to this from our first-hand experience. And we found that through our digital recognition platform, our employees, they feel valued, and they feel recognized, and they feel a sense of connection to both their colleagues and to our company. And especially because there's a lot of life events that we do as well. So it's not just thanking people for, you did an absolutely, great job, in terms of, the impact and how that measured and how we can sustain that. But life events, championing, people's birthdays, people's, celebrations, buying a home, having a baby, whatever that is, but really, really championing the whole human. And the best part is that this gift keeps on giving. And why? Because it doesn't matter where our employees are working from. Recognition can happen anytime, anywhere, and to anyone. And the impact to us as humans is profound. And to echo or Derek even earlier, without the human, it's just work.
Thank you for that. And what's interesting, previously, I mean, we've been running several conferences. What came out this year as a trend, or probably more under the sort of a magnifying glass, is the pressure on managers, particularly mid-managers, when it comes to leading and managing their own team. They've been struggling. They've been probably been under the most pressure. So it's a question to probably all of you. What was your experience in dealing with managers in your organization, with the new way of working? and what did you learn from it, and how did you support, how did you change your view on the role of managers in terms of supporting them to deal with today's new realities?
Well, perhaps I can start, right? So I think it was, Mihaly, as you're saying, right? So just reconfirming the importance of the people leaders, right? Or the managers, like middle managers especially, right? So who ultimately is really the cornerstone, right? Sort of the business. And we acknowledge sort of that they play both roles. They are employees themselves, so they were going through the same motions and sort of challenges as we were all going as employees, as human beings. And you're absolutely right. We actually put additional, almost like accountability on them, telling them that they should become better managers, better people leaders going through pandemic. So what we realized early on that while we had some sort of formal training for different stages of newly appointed people leader experience, etc., but what really they needed, some practical, very quick, almost live examples, and sort of more senior leaders, more experienced leaders sharing their sort of what they're going through and how they're dealing with this. So we had a series, almost like town halls, right? Sort of virtual communication channels where we asked our most senior leaders sharing the examples of what they're going through, how they are helping the teams, how they're managing the team. So any people leader can sort of dial in, listen, and get sort of these lively real life examples. So it served two purposes. It actually allowed us to show the human side of the most senior leaders, to show that actually it's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to say, well, it was the most difficult situation I had to deal with my team. I didn't know how to share sort of how to take care of my team member going through the first family COVID case, right, at the early days. And it's actually okay to say that I don't know, but that's how I did this, right? So showing vulnerability of the senior leaders, giving real life examples to the people leaders, and sort of strengthen this connection, right? So that's what we did, and it worked pretty well for us.
Thank you, Katja. Liz, may I turn to you about how did you look at mid-managers at Volvo Cars?
I mean, first thing in March 2020, like you were saying earlier, we had China who had gone through this a couple of months before us. So we kind of knew this was coming, and we were ready. And the first thing was starting with the technology. I mean, we had a lot of managers who didn't really use, and it was Teams in our organization, who didn't really use Teams. So we very quickly got out there and got them up and running on Teams and how to work with Teams so that they could have their one-to-ones, and just helping them to understand you still can work remotely with Teams. It works very, very well, actually. And to have those, as I say, the one-to-ones, the feedback sessions. And what happened was we ended up going online with bite-sized learning for all of our leaders. And I think in a normal year, we'd probably see around about 800 leaders going through sort of the face-to-face programs. And we saw 2,000 going through during that period. So it was pretty spectacular. And it just gave them the confidence and skills to be able to work remotely, to be able to connect with their teams, to be able to pick up the phone. There was more picking up the phone and just checking in. Hey, how are you today? How's it going? What do you need? And that was pretty special, I think.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Liz. And Donna, of course, Workhuman went through a massive hiring during the pandemic, which of course comes with additional challenges of not just the way of managing teams, but also bringing new team members, engaging them, connecting with them. So what was your way of dealing with managers to make sure they feel the right level of support?
I think even building on what Katja and Liz has mentioned there, but it was definitely about quickly transitioning and, progressing whatever technology that we had, that we were adopting that as our, mode of contact, so that was super, super important for us. And getting people to a place where through the virtual lens, through the virtual world, that people still had that connection. So I guess, and also as well, I think, a leadership takeaway in a way was that change is happening, and almost to in the face of change and the scariness that brought for everybody, having that empathy, but also making sure that, you know, people felt empowered by change and not so scared of it, where, you know, everything can change in an instant, but change became a valuable commodity for us, you know, as leaders, but as humans, and, you know, to be better than we were yesterday. So if we could accept, you know, and I guess embed that message that change is a constant, then we were, as, you know, a collective, as an organization, we were embracing the endless possibilities that change invites, and we were shifting those paradigms, freeing us and our teams to become trailblazers, driving, you know, innovation and moving the needle on the business metrics that mattered.
Thank you, Don. And particularly, let me pick on the topic of change, because that's just so important, and mention that the only thing is constant these days is change.
Yeah.
And the biggest sort of a disconnect, the biggest disengaging factor is the uncertainty, when somebody feels that things don't go the way, there's not unpredictability in business, probably. So what's your experience in terms of communicating change with your leaders and through your leaders to the entire workforce? What have you learned in the pandemic, and that you actually carry towards after the pandemic, that make change stick in a long run? Let's start with Liz this time, if I may.
Well, it's the old saying, isn't it? It's communicate, 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 and communicate in different ways. One of the things that we did during the pandemic was started a radio show, and that was like just an informal chat show, really, where people could call in and talk about, you know, what they were struggling with.
Was it an actual radio show at Volvo
Internally, yeah.
Oh wow!
Yeah, and it was great. I mean, it was, and we had guests coming on, so that was kind of like an informal way of getting messages across. And then we had our more formal, if you like, sort of corporate let's talk. And people appreciated both, because they were getting the corporate message, and then they were getting something that was a little bit more, hey, you know, we don't have to be using the wellbeing app that you've provided us, and we don't have to be doing exercise if we feel really sad and want to sit on the sofa and, you know, eat chocolate biscuits. That's okay too. So it was that sort of informal and formal, so different modes of communication, as well as the, you know, the one-to-ones. Yeah.
Brilliant. Katja, is there anything you'd like to add from your end?
Yeah. No, I think Liz took the words out of my mouth. Communicate, communicate, communicate. But just maybe talking about a bit more softer side. So I think it was important to remain confident, yet be flexible, to adjust sort of both the tone and the content of the messages as we were going through different cycles. It's important never to overreact, right? So I would say be deliberately calm. You cannot be neither positive nor too negative, right? So, and just connecting back to what Judith was saying, right? Consistency of the values. I think it was also important, always have sort of remind our teams about the purpose of our business, about the 3 priorities that we set ourselves going through the pandemic. So whatever we're communicating, we're connecting this back. So at least sort of the teams feel that there is some stability in this chaos of change, right? And that was around sort of what we do, for whom we do, and sort of what we are going to achieve short term. So that was some of the lessons learned for us.
Brilliant. And just look at my clock here, and sadly, this half an hour is up. So it's obviously time flies when we are having fun. So maybe as a closing comment, what would you say? Let's start with Don this time. What would you say around, what we learned in terms of leadership, and how to engage, appreciate, and connect people at our workplace, which we learned from the pandemic, and then we move out, which we can carry forward from here on?
I guess, embrace change as a constant, as a valuable commodity to evolve, accelerate that blueprint thinking that we all have, so we can innovate a roadmap that has not been journeyed before, and never underestimate the power of thanks.
Wonderful.
Well, I would say leaders really need to be very sort of self-reflective, self-aware, and having a tremendous learning agility, because going through COVID, we realized that our prior experience was valuable, but it was not really something that was getting us through pandemic. As we said, we had to innovate, quick decisions, really different decisions. So this learning agility and accepting that the leaders can and should learn from their teams. So how do you create your team with very different backgrounds, very different experiences, and how as a leader you can be vulnerable and humble, say, well, actually, I don't know what I don't know. I will learn from my team and be grateful for these learnings and thanking the teams for that. So I think that is quite important going forward.
Thank you, Katja. Liz, with comments.
Yep. I think we need to unlearn how we lead and how we work. The pandemic has taught us a lot, and we've got a lot more to learn. Gone are the superheroes, gone are the know-it-alls, gone are the tellers. We now are moving into a very different way of working and leading. So the empathy, the compassion, the learning agility, as you said, we don't know the answers. And we're only going to do that through asking the questions and listening. So a different kind of leadership going forward, a different way of working.
Liz, Donna, Katja, thank you so much wisdom. This is the only thing we could squeeze in half an hour, but I'm really hopeful that people manage to take away some golden nuggets, and of course, those who watch the recordings as well. Thank you so much for everybody's joining. With this, we have concluded this session. Again, I'm really appreciated, just really from the bottom of my heart, for all of your contribution, generously sharing. And I hope to connect with all of you on LinkedIn. Of course, meet you at future events, future webinars. Thank you so much. Take care. Have a nice rest of the day.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.